The red dust swirled around Lily's boots as she walked through the crystal gardens of Kepler Colony. Her small hand gripped the leash connected to the most unusual pet anyone had ever brought to this distant world. Razer looked like a miniature black and white bear, but his reputation preceded him across 3 star systems. The honey badger had been modified by Earth scientists to survive in alien atmospheres, but his legendary fearlessness remained completely intact. Lily found her favorite spot behind the processing plant where the grown-ups couldn't see her. She unclipped Razor's leash and watched him immediately begin digging holes in the crystalline soil. Most people were afraid of honey badgers, but Lily thought they just didn't understand. Razor wasn't mean, he just didn't back down from anything. Ever. Her father worked deep in the mines extracting the blue crystals that powered faster than light travel. The crystals were worth more than entire planets, which made Kepler Colony one of the most valuable settlements in human space. Lily didn't care about any of that. She just liked watching the way the crystals caught sunlight and threw rainbow patterns across the ground. Administrator Ross had told everyone that space was dangerous and full of bad aliens who might want to hurt humans. But Lily had never seen any aliens except in pictures. The colony felt safe with its force fields and defense systems. The only exciting thing that ever happened was when supply ships arrived from Earth bringing new families and packages from home. Razer suddenly stopped digging and stood perfectly still. His small black eyes scanned the horizon while his nose twitched. Lily followed his gaze but saw nothing except the usual red landscape dotted with mining equipment. Whatever had caught his attention was invisible to human senses. "What is it, Razer?" she whispered. The honey badger made a low growling sound that Lily had never heard before. It wasn't his normal annoyed grunt when someone tried to pet him. This was different, deeper, almost like a warning. High above them, 5 dark shapes moved across the star-filled sky. They were too far away to see clearly, but they moved with purpose rather than the random drift of asteroids. Razor's growl grew louder as the shapes grew larger. Lily's father had taught her to recognize different types of spacecraft. Supply ships were big and slow and made lots of noise. Military ships were sleek and fast and usually traveled alone. These ships were something else entirely. They moved like predators stalking prey, spreading out to surround the colony from multiple directions. The colony's warning sirens should have been screaming by now, but everything remained quiet. Either the defense systems hadn't detected the approaching ships or something was preventing the alarms from working. Lily felt a cold knot form in her stomach as she realized the second option was more likely. Razer abandoned his hole and moved to stand directly in front of Lily. His fur stood on end, making him look twice his normal size. She had seen him face down wild animals 3 times his size without showing fear, but now he seemed genuinely concerned, not for himself, but for her. The ships were close enough now that Lily could see their angular designs and weapon arrays. They looked nothing like human spacecraft with their curved hulls and bright markings. These vessels were built for war, painted in dark colors that made them hard to spot against the void of space. A beam of pale light erupted from the lead ship and swept across the colony's main buildings. Within seconds, all the electronic displays and communication arrays went dark. The force field generators that protected the settlement flickered and died. Whatever technology these aliens possessed, it was advanced enough to disable human defenses without triggering any warnings. Lily understood that she should run back to the main settlement and find her father. But Razer hadn't moved from his protective position in front of her. His eyes remained fixed on the sky where the alien ships were beginning their descent. She trusted the honey badger's instincts more than her own fear. The first ship landed near the colony's central plaza with barely a whisper of sound. Its landing was so smooth and quiet that anyone not watching the sky would never have known it arrived. The other 4 ships took positions around the settlement's perimeter, effectively cutting off all escape routes. Lily crawled behind a stack of crystal containers and pulled Razer with her. From this hiding spot, she could see alien figures emerging from the landed ship. They moved like professional soldiers, spreading out to secure the area before their leader appeared. The aliens were tall and reptilian with scales that shifted color in the sunlight. Their hands ended in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through metal, and their eyes glowed with an inner light that made them visible even in shadow. They carried weapons that hummed with energy and wore armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their leader was, larger than the others and wore more elaborate armor decorated with what looked like trophies from previous conquests. When he spoke, his voice carried across the settlement with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Humans of Kepler Colony," the alien announced. "I am Captain Thre of the Void Stalkers. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender peacefully and you will be allowed to live as our slaves. Resist and you will be eliminated." Lily watched colonists being herded out of their homes at weapon point. She recognized neighbors and friends among the frightened faces. Her father was nowhere to be seen, but she hoped he was still safely underground in the mines where the aliens might not have found him yet. Razer remained motionless beside her, but she could feel the tension in his small body. He was waiting for something, though she couldn't imagine what a honey badger could do against armed aliens with advanced technology. Sometimes she forgot that Earth animals had survived for millions of years before humans invented weapons and machines. One of the alien soldiers noticed movement near the crystal gardens and began walking in their direction. His weapon was raised and ready to fire at anything that moved. Lily held her breath and tried to make herself as small as possible behind the containers. The soldier was only 20 feet away when Razer finally moved. But instead of attacking or running, the honey badger simply stood up and walked into the open where the alien could see him clearly. Lily wanted to call him back but didn't dare make a sound. The alien soldier stopped and stared at the small Earth creature with obvious confusion. He had probably never seen anything like a honey badger before. After a moment, he lowered his weapon and began laughing at what he assumed was someone's harmless pet. That was his first mistake. Razer tilted his head and studied the alien with the same expression he used when deciding whether something was worth fighting. The honey badger's decision process was simple. If it moved and seemed threatening, it needed to be dealt with. Size and weapons were irrelevant factors. The alien soldier made his second mistake when he took another step forward, thinking he could simply capture the strange little animal. Razer's eyes never left the soldier's face as he calculated distance, speed, and the most efficient way to neutralize this particular threat to his human companion. The alien soldier never saw Razer move. One moment he was looking down at what appeared to be a harmless Earth pet, and the next moment 20 pounds of pure fury was attached to his throat. Honey badgers had earned their reputation by taking down lions and leopards on Earth. An overconfident alien in armor was just another day at the office. Lily watched in amazement as Razer systematically dismantled the soldier's protective gear with claws designed to tear through beehives and termite mounds. The alien's armor might have been proof against energy weapons, but it offered no protection against an animal that had evolved to fight creatures twice its size. The soldier's screams brought the attention of his squad mates, but by the time they arrived, Razer had already disappeared back into the crystal gardens. The wounded alien was alive but would need serious medical attention. More importantly for Lily, the other soldiers now knew that this planet contained more than helpless human colonists. Captain Thre studied the claw marks on his soldier's armor and made a mistake that would cost him dearly. He assumed he was dealing with some sort of guard animal that could be easily hunted down and eliminated. The concept of a creature that fought purely for the joy of fighting was foreign to his experience. "Grix, take your team and eliminate whatever did this," Thre ordered his reptilian commander. "I want it done quickly and quietly. We cannot afford to look weak in front of the human slaves." Grix nodded and selected 3 of his best hunters. They had tracked dangerous prey across dozens of worlds and considered themselves experts at dealing with hostile fauna. The idea that a small Earth creature could pose any real threat was laughable. Lily heard them coming before she saw them. Their armor made soft clicking sounds as they moved through the crystal formations, and their breathing was different from human respiratory patterns. Razer heard them too and positioned himself between Lily and the approaching hunters. The first hunter rounded a stack of containers and found himself face to face with the honey badger. Unlike his injured colleague, this soldier was ready for combat. He raised his weapon and prepared to fire at the small target. Razer had faced energy weapons before during his training on Earth. The secret to surviving such encounters was never being where your enemy expected you to be. He launched himself not at the soldier's weapon hand but at his legs, bringing down the much larger alien in a tangle of armor and claws. The second hunter tried to get a clear shot, but his teammate was in the way. By the time he had a clear line of sight, Razer was already moving toward his position. The honey badger's strategy was simple. Never stay in one place long enough for your enemies to coordinate their attacks. Lily found herself giggling as she watched the aliens struggle to deal with one small Earth animal. They had advanced technology and superior numbers, but they were thinking like civilized beings. Razer was thinking like a predator who had never learned the meaning of retreat. The third hunter decided to use his personal force field to capture the honey badger. It was a sound tactical decision that would have worked against most Earth animals. Unfortunately for him, Razer had been modified by human scientists who understood that their creation might someday face advanced alien technology. The force field activated around Razer, creating a cage of energy that should have held him securely. Instead, the honey badger began methodically testing the field's parameters, looking for weaknesses with the patience of a creature that had once spent 3 days digging through solid rock to reach a beehive. Grix realized his hunters were being systematically defeated by what appeared to be someone's pet. The situation was becoming embarrassing, and Captain Thre would not tolerate failure. He activated his communicator to request reinforcements from the other ships. All units converge on the Crystal Gardens. We have a hostile creature that requires immediate elimination. Use maximum firepower. Lily understood enough about military tactics to know that having all the aliens focus on this area was bad news. But Razer seemed completely unconcerned about the approaching reinforcements. If anything, he appeared to be enjoying himself for the first time since arriving on this boring planet. The honey badger had spent months in a sterile habitat with nothing more dangerous than food dispensers and cleaning robots. The prospect of facing multiple opponents with actual weapons was the most interesting thing that had happened to him in ages. His genetic modifications had enhanced his natural abilities, but they had not changed his fundamental nature. 20 alien soldiers surrounded the Crystal Gardens with enough firepower to level a small building. They moved with professional precision, covering all possible escape routes while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. Against any normal Earth animal, it would have been massive overkill. Razer studied the tactical situation with the calculating intelligence that had allowed honey badgers to survive on a planet full of larger predators. The aliens had superior numbers and weapons, but they were thinking like a military unit. They expected their enemy to either fight or flee according to predictable patterns. The honey badger had no intention of doing either. Instead, he began implementing a strategy that had served his species well for millions of years. If you cannot avoid a fight, make sure your enemies remember it for the rest of their lives. Captain Thre arrived with additional reinforcements, bringing the total number of soldiers to 30. He was confident that overwhelming force would solve the problem quickly and allow them to return to the more important business of enslaving the human colonists. Surround and destroy, he commanded. I want that creature eliminated within the next 5 minutes. The alien soldiers began closing their circle, tightening the noose around what they assumed was a trapped animal. Their weapons were charged and ready. Their coordination was perfect and their confidence was absolute. They had hunted dangerous prey before and survived to tell the tale. Lily watched from her hiding place and felt sorry for the aliens. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Razer was not just any Earth animal. He was a honey badger who had been specifically designed to survive in hostile environments. More importantly, he was protecting something he cared about. The first energy blast lit up the Crystal Gardens like a small sun. When the glare faded, the spot where Razer had been standing was empty except for a small crater in the crystalline soil. The aliens assumed their target had been vaporized and began congratulating themselves on a successful hunt. That was when they learned the difference between hunting animals and fighting something that refused to accept the concept of defeat. Razer had not been vaporized, he had simply moved, faster than their eyes could follow, and was now somewhere. Behind their carefully planned formation, the honey badger's counterattack began with a lesson about Earth evolution that the aliens would never forget. On a planet where everything was trying to eat everything else, survival went to creatures that fought harder, faster, and more viciously than anything their enemies had ever encountered. Lily stopped feeling sorry for the aliens and started feeling sorry for Razer. He was outnumbered 30-1, but that just meant he would have to work harder to make his point. The honey badger had never learned to quit, and his genetic modifications had not changed that fundamental aspect of his personality. Chaos erupted through the Crystal Gardens as Razer systematically demonstrated why honey badgers were considered the most fearless animals on Earth. The alien Soldiers had expected to face a cornered creature that would either cower or make a desperate last stand. Instead, they found themselves dealing with something that seemed to grow more dangerous the more opposition it faced. The honey badger moved through their formation like a furry tornado, appearing wherever the aliens least expected him. His claws, enhanced by human genetic engineering, cut through their advanced armor as easily as his ancestors had torn through African termite mounds. Every few seconds, another soldier would scream and fall as Razer found gaps in their protective gear that their designers had never considered. Lily watched from behind her crystal containers, no longer afraid but fascinated by the unfolding battle. She had always known Razer was special, but she had never seen him face a real challenge before. The honey badger was not just fighting. He was teaching the aliens a lesson about Earth biology that their species would remember for generations. Captain Thre found himself in the unprecedented position of losing a battle against a single Earth animal. His soldiers were some of the most experienced raiders in the galaxy, veterans of dozens of successful conquests. They had faced everything from giant space whales to sentient crystal formations, but none of them had any idea how to deal with an opponent that simply refused to be intimidated. "Use the neural disruptors," Thre commanded. "That creature cannot resist technology it has never encountered." The soldiers activated weapons designed to shut down nervous systems with targeted electromagnetic pulses. The neural disruptors had proven effective against every biological entity they had previously encountered, from simple animals to complex alien intelligences. Razer felt the electromagnetic pulse wash over him and experienced a moment of disorientation. The human scientists who had modified him had anticipated many threats, but they had not specifically prepared him for this type of attack. However, they had enhanced his natural resilience and given him something even more valuable: the ability to adapt under pressure. The honey badger shook off the neural disruption and resumed his assault with renewed determination. The aliens had just taught him that they possessed weapons he had not yet experienced. This meant the fight was becoming more interesting rather than more dangerous. The next wave of soldiers found themselves facing an opponent who had learned from their previous attacks. Razer now moved in patterns designed to avoid the neural disruptors, while maximizing his own offensive capabilities. His strategy was simple: get close enough that their advanced weapons became liabilities rather than advantages. Commander Grix, the reptilian hunter, realized they were losing the psychological battle as well as the physical one. His soldiers were beginning to show signs of fear, something that had never happened during previous raids. The idea that a small Earth creature could threaten experienced warriors was undermining their confidence. "Sir, perhaps we should request orbital bombardment," Grix suggested to Captain Thre. "This situation is becoming unstable." Thre considered the option but rejected it. Orbital bombardment would destroy the valuable crystals they had come to steal, and it would also make them look weak to the other raider clans. News of the Void Stalkers being defeated by a single Earth animal would spread throughout the galaxy and damage their reputation permanently. Instead, he decided to demonstrate his own combat skills by facing the honey badger personally. As the leader of the most feared raider clan in 3 sectors, Thre had never met an opponent he could not defeat. His claws were longer than Razer's, his armor was stronger, and his weapons were more advanced. The alien captain entered the Crystal Gardens with the confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. He had personally killed opponents 3 times his size and faced down entire military units without flinching. One enhanced Earth animal would not be allowed to embarrass him in front of his crew. Razer sensed the approach of a more dangerous opponent and adjusted his tactics accordingly. This alien moved differently from the soldiers, with the fluid grace of a natural hunter rather than the mechanical precision of a trained warrior. The honey badger recognized a fellow predator and prepared for a more serious confrontation. The 2 predators circled each other in a clearing surrounded by shattered crystal formations and disabled alien equipment. Thre was twice Razer's size and armed with weapons that could vaporize solid rock. The honey badger had only his natural weapons and the enhancements provided by human science. Lily held her breath as she watched the confrontation unfold. She had seen Razer face dangerous situations before, but never against something that was clearly designed for killing. The alien captain moved like a professional fighter, studying his opponent for weaknesses while maintaining perfect defensive positioning. Thre struck first, his claws creating sparks as they scraped against crystal formations. The attack was blindingly fast and would have been lethal against most Earth animals. But Razer had not survived millions of years of evolution by being most animals. The honey badger rolled under the attack and came up inside Thre's guard, his claws finding the joints in the alien's armor with surgical precision. The captain's advanced protection was designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, but it had not been tested against something with the intelligence to target its weakest points. Thre roared in pain and anger as he felt Razer's claws penetrate his defenses. The sensation was completely foreign to him. He had not been wounded in combat for over 20 years. The idea that an Earth animal could hurt him was almost as shocking as the physical damage itself. The alien captain activated his personal force field and tried to catch Razer in an energy cage. But the honey badger had already learned from the previous soldier's mistake. Instead of trying to escape the force field, he used it as a platform to launch himself at Thre's head. The impact knocked the captain backward into a pile of crystal containers. For the first time in his military career, Thre found himself flat on his back while his opponent stood over him, ready to continue the fight. The psychological damage was even greater than the physical wounds. Razer studied the fallen alien with the detached interest of a predator deciding whether his opponent was worth finishing off. The honey badger had made his point. He was not intimidated by size, weapons, or technology. If the aliens wanted to continue fighting, he was prepared to accommodate them. The remaining soldiers watched their leader struggle to regain his footing while a small Earth animal stood ready to resume combat. Their confidence in the superiority of their species was beginning to crack. If Captain Thre could be defeated by this creature, what did that say about their own chances? Lily realized that something fundamental had changed in the Crystal Gardens. The aliens had arrived with the assumption that they were the apex predators in this situation. Razer had proven them wrong using nothing but the natural abilities that had made honey badgers the most feared animals on Earth. The honey badger was not finished with his lesson. He had 29 more opponents to educate about Earth biology, and the day was still young. Somewhere in the distance, Lily could hear more alien ships landing as reinforcements arrived to deal with what their commanders assumed was a minor problem. Razer heard the additional ships as well and felt a surge of satisfaction. More opponents meant more opportunities to demonstrate why honey badgers had never learned the meaning of surrender. The aliens had made the mistake of threatening his human companion, and he intended to make sure they never repeated that error. Word of the situation in the Crystal Gardens spread through the Voidstalker fleet like wildfire. What had begun as a simple raid on a defenseless human colony was becoming the most embarrassing military disaster in the clan's history. 3 additional ships had landed, bringing the total alien force to over 200 soldiers, all focused on eliminating a single Earth animal. Commander Venom, an insectoid warrior from the second ship, could not believe the reports he was receiving.
His species had conquered 17 worlds by overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and firepower.
The idea that one small creature could resist such overwhelming odds challenged everything he understood about warfare. Captain Thre, request permission to use chemical weapons, Venom transmitted. My species has developed toxins that can kill any biological entity within minutes. Thre, still nursing his wounds from his encounter with Razer, considered the proposal. Chemical weapons would certainly solve the immediate problem, but they would also contaminate the valuable crystals that made this raid profitable. More importantly, using such extreme measures against a single animal would make his clan the laughingstock of the galaxy. Negative, Thre replied. We handle this with conventional weapons only. Lily watched from her hiding place as more alien soldiers surrounded the Crystal Gardens. She could see Razer moving between the crystal formations like a furry ghost, always one step ahead of his pursuers. The honey badger seemed to be enjoying the challenge of facing such overwhelming odds. Commander Scar, a feline alien known for her stealth tactics, decided to try a different approach. Instead of using brute force, she would track the creature using her species' superior senses and eliminate it with precision strikes. Her claws were coated with paralytic venom that could disable any nervous system within seconds. The feline commander moved through the Crystal Gardens with predatory grace, following scent trails that her enhanced nose could detect even through the alien atmosphere. She had hunted the most dangerous prey in the galaxy, and had never failed to bring down her target. Razer knew he was being stalked by something different from the other soldiers. This alien moved like a natural hunter rather than a trained warrior, and her scent carried the unmistakable markers of a creature that killed for more than just survival. The honey badger appreciated skilled opposition and prepared to test his abilities against a worthy opponent. The confrontation between Scar and Razer took place in a maze of crystal formations that reflected and distorted light in confusing patterns. Both predators relied on senses beyond simple vision, creating a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the rainbow reflections. Scar struck first, her venomous claws slashing through the space where Razer had been standing milliseconds earlier. The honey badger's modified reflexes allowed him to avoid attacks that would have been impossible to dodge with natural abilities alone. He countered with his own strike, leaving parallel scratches in the alien's armor. The feline commander realized she was facing something unprecedented. Her venom should have paralyzed any Earth creature within seconds of contact, but the honey badger showed no signs of being affected. The human scientists had given Razer immunity to most biological toxins as part of his enhancement package. Lily found herself giggling again as she watched Scar become increasingly frustrated with her inability to catch Razer. The alien was clearly a skilled hunter, but she was used to prey that followed predictable patterns. Honey badgers had never been predictable about anything. Commander Bone, the Ursine heavy weapons specialist, grew tired of watching his colleagues fail against a single small animal. His species believed in simple solutions to complex problems. If something was causing trouble, you hit it with enough firepower to vaporize a city block. "Stand clear," Bone commanded as he activated his plasma cannon. "I am ending this embarrassment now." The weapon charged with a sound like thunder, building energy sufficient to melt through starship hulls. Every soldier in the Crystal Gardens took cover behind whatever protection they could find. The plasma discharge would leave nothing but superheated gas where the honey badger had been standing. Razer sensed the buildup of energy and made a tactical decision that would have seemed suicidal to any creature with normal survival instincts. Instead of seeking cover, he charged directly toward the source of the threat. Honey badgers had survived on Earth by refusing to back down from any challenge regardless of the odds. The plasma cannon fired just as Razer reached optimal position. But instead of standing in the weapon's path, the honey badger had positioned himself directly beneath the massive alien wielding it. The plasma beam passed harmlessly over his head while he demonstrated what happened to creatures that threatened his territory. Commander Bone found himself flat on his back with 20 pounds of genetically enhanced fury attached to his face. His plasma cannon lay several feet away, its barrel twisted into an unusable shape by forces that should not have been possible for such a small creature to generate. The sight of their heavy weapons specialist being defeated by the same Earth animal that had already embarrassed 3 other commanders finally broke the morale of the alien soldiers. They had signed up to raid defenseless colonies, not to face creatures that seemed to grow stronger with each opponent they defeated. Captain Thre realized that continuing this battle was pointless. His forces were being systematically humiliated by a single enhanced Earth animal, and news of their failure was probably already spreading to rival raider clans. The damage to their reputation would take years to repair. "All units, withdraw to minimum safe distance," Thre ordered. "Prepare for orbital bombardment." Lily heard the command and felt a surge of panic. Orbital bombardment would destroy everything in the Crystal Gardens, including Razer and herself. She had to do something to prevent the aliens from taking such drastic action. Without thinking about the consequences, Lily stood up from her hiding place and walked toward the center of the Crystal Gardens, where Razer was still facing down the remaining alien soldiers. Her appearance caused an immediate ceasefire as both sides tried to process this new development. "Razer, come here," Lily called in the same tone she used when it was time for his daily grooming. "I think our new friends want to talk." The honey badger immediately abandoned his combat stance and trotted over to his human companion. He sat down beside her feet and began cleaning his claws with the casual indifference of a creature that had just finished a routine exercise session. The alien soldiers stared in amazement at the sight of the small human child calmly petting the same animal that had just defeated their best warriors. The implications were staggering. If this creature was merely a pet, what were adult humans capable of accomplishing? Captain Thre approached slowly, his weapons lowered but ready to fire if the situation turned dangerous again. He had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved countless species, but he had never encountered anything like this before. "Child," Thre said carefully, "call off your creature and no harm will come to you." Lily looked up at the towering alien captain with the fearless curiosity of a child who had never learned to be intimidated by size or appearance. She had grown up on a frontier world where dangerous situations were part of daily life. "Razer isn't my creature," she replied matter-of-factly. "He's my friend, and I think you scared him by being so loud and mean." The alien captain found himself in the unprecedented position of negotiating with an 8-year-old human child and her pet honey badger. His military training had not prepared him for this type of diplomatic crisis. The standoff in the Crystal Gardens had evolved into something completely outside Captain Thre's experience. His massive raider fleet, capable of devastating entire star systems, was effectively neutralized by an 8-year-old girl and her pet honey badger. The tactical situation made no sense according to any military doctrine he had ever studied. Lily sat cross-legged on the crystalline ground, while Razer curled up in her lap like an oversized house cat. The honey badger's transformation from unstoppable warrior to docile companion was so complete that several alien soldiers wondered if they had been fighting the same creature. "Are you really space pirates?" Lily asked with the innocent curiosity that only children could maintain in dangerous situations. "My dad told me stories about space pirates, but he said they were usually more polite when they visited planets." Captain Thre found himself struggling to maintain his threatening demeanor while dealing with a child who seemed genuinely interested in his profession rather than terrified by his presence. His reputation as the most feared raider in 3 sectors was built on inspiring terror, not answering questions about career choices. "We are the Void Stalkers," Thre replied, trying to sound intimidating. "We take what we want from worlds that cannot defend themselves." Lily nodded thoughtfully while scratching behind Razer's ears. The honey badger made a contented purring sound that was completely at odds with his recent display of combat prowess. "That doesn't sound very nice," she observed. "Don't the people on those planets get upset when you take their stuff?" The alien captain realized he was losing control of the narrative. Conversations with conquest targets were supposed to involve surrender demands and threats of violence, not discussions about the ethical implications of raiding. He looked around at his soldiers and saw confusion, rather than the confident readiness that should have followed a successful landing. Commander Grix approached his captain and spoke in their native language, hoping the human child would not understand their tactical discussion. Unfortunately for him, Lily had been raised on a multicultural colony where universal translators were standard equipment. "Sir, the human military forces are still in the underground mines," Grix reported. "We could seize them as hostages and force the child to control her creature." Lily's expression changed from curious to concerned as she processed this information. Her father and his colleagues were in danger, and these aliens were planning to hurt them unless she cooperated. The innocent phase of their conversation was clearly over. "Razer," she whispered, "I think these people want to hurt Daddy." The honey badger's transformation back to combat readiness was instantaneous. One moment he was a sleepy pet enjoying attention, and the next he was a coiled spring ready to unleash fury on anyone who threatened his human family. The alien soldiers took several steps backward as they recognized the return of their most dangerous opponent. Captain Thre realized his subordinate's tactical suggestion had backfired spectacularly. Instead of gaining leverage over the situation, they had reminded the Earth creature why it had been fighting in the first place. The honey badger's protective instincts were now fully activated again. "Wait," Thre said quickly, raising his hands in a gesture of peaceful intent. "No one needs to be hurt here. We are reasonable beings who can negotiate a mutually beneficial arrangement." Lily studied the alien captain with the shrewd intelligence that children often displayed when adults underestimated them. She understood that the raiders were only being diplomatic, because they were afraid of Razer. The balance of power in this situation was more complex than either side had initially realized. "What kind of arrangement?" she asked. Thre found himself in the unprecedented position of conducting trade negotiations with a human child. His usual tactics of intimidation and overwhelming force had been neutralized by a creature that simply refused to be intimidated by anything. He needed a new approach that did not involve violence. "Your world has valuable crystals," he explained. "We need those crystals for our ships. Perhaps we could establish a trade agreement that benefits everyone involved. Lily considered this proposal while Razer watched the surrounding aliens with predatory alertness. The honey badger was prepared to resume hostilities at the first sign of treachery, but he was willing to let his human companion handle the diplomatic aspects of their situation. You mean like buying the crystals instead of stealing them? Lily asked. The concept of paying for resources instead of simply taking them was foreign to Voidstalker culture, but Thre recognized that his current options were limited. His forces had proven incapable of dealing with the honey badger through military means, and orbital bombardment would destroy the very crystals they had come to acquire. Yes, he agreed reluctantly. We could establish a trading relationship. Lily brightened at this suggestion, apparently pleased that the aliens were willing to consider more civilized behavior. She had grown up in a frontier community where cooperation and mutual assistance were essential for survival. That sounds much better, she said. My dad knows all about the crystals and mining operations. He could probably help you figure out fair prices and delivery schedules. The alien soldiers looked at each other in confusion. Their raid had somehow transformed into a business meeting, mediated by a human child and supervised by an Earth animal that had already demonstrated its ability to defeat their best warriors. The situation was unprecedented in their military experience. Commander Scar, still nursing wounds from her encounter with Razer, approached her captain with obvious reluctance. Her feline pride had been badly damaged by her failure to defeat the honey badger. But she recognized the tactical reality of their situation. Sir, she said quietly, perhaps this solution would be preferable to explaining to High Command why we suffered casualties against a single Earth animal. Thre understood the political implications immediately. News of their military failure would spread throughout the raider community and damage the Voidstalker's reputation permanently. A successful trade negotiation, however, could be presented as evidence of their diplomatic sophistication. Very well, he announced to his assembled forces. We will attempt to establish trade relations with this colony. Lily clapped her hands in delight, causing several alien soldiers to flinch reflexively. They had not yet adjusted to the idea that the small human was not a threat to their safety, unlike her remarkably dangerous pet. This is going to be so exciting, she said. I've never met real space traders before. Wait until I tell my friends about this. Razer remained watchful but relaxed as long as the aliens maintained their peaceful demeanor. The honey badger understood that the immediate threat had passed, but he was prepared to resume defensive action if circumstances changed. His loyalty to Lily was absolute and unconditional. Captain Thre found himself wondering how many other human colonies possessed similar protective arrangements. If Earth animals were routinely capable of defeating advanced military technology, the implications for future raiding operations were sobering. Perhaps it was time for the Voidstalkers to consider legitimate business opportunities. The crystal gardens that had recently been a battlefield were now the site of the galaxy's most unusual trade negotiation. An 8-year-old girl and her honey badger had accomplished something that entire military fleets had failed to achieve. They had convinced the Voidstalkers to consider peaceful alternatives to conquest. 3 months after the incident in the Crystal Gardens, Kepler colony had become the most prosperous trading post in the Outer Rim. The Voidstalkers' conversion from raiders to merchants had sent shockwaves through the galactic community. But the arrangement was proving profitable for everyone involved. Lily had become something of a celebrity among the alien traders who now regularly visited the colony. They called her the small diplomat and brought her gifts from distant worlds, though they were always careful to ask Razer's permission before approaching too closely. The honey badger's reputation had spread throughout the raider community, and no one wanted to risk offending Earth's most dangerous ambassador. Captain Thre, now calling himself Trade Captain Thre, had discovered that legitimate commerce was considerably more profitable than raiding. The crystals from Kepler colony commanded premium prices in civilized markets, and the Voidstalkers' fearsome reputation actually helped them negotiate better deals with suppliers who were eager to avoid conflict. The transformation had not been easy for his crews, who were accustomed to taking what they wanted rather than paying for it. However, the memory of watching their best warriors being systematically defeated by a single Earth animal provided powerful motivation for embracing new business practices. Lily's father, David, had initially been skeptical about trading with former pirates, But the arrangement had proven more beneficial than anyone had expected. The aliens brought advanced technology and rare materials that were impossible to obtain through normal human trade networks. More importantly, their presence provided protection against other raider clans who were reluctant to attack a world defended by creatures that had defeated the infamous Void Stalkers. The honey badger had become the unofficial guardian of all trade negotiations. Razer's presence at business meetings ensured that discussions remained civil and agreements were honored by all parties. His reputation for protecting his territory had expanded to include the entire colony and its trading partners. News of the peaceful resolution had reached Earth, where scientists were studying the implications of using enhanced Earth animals as diplomatic tools. The success at Kepler colony suggested that humanity's biological heritage might provide unexpected advantages in interstellar relations. Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist from the Earth Colonial Authority, arrived to study the situation firsthand. She was particularly interested in understanding how a creature designed for survival in hostile environments had become an effective mediator between species with fundamentally different values. The key factor appears to be the honey badger's absolute fearlessness. Dr. Kim explained to the colony administrators, "Other species respect strength above all else, and Razer demonstrates a form of strength they have never encountered before." Lily was happy to discuss Razer's unique qualities with the visiting scientist. She had always known her pet was special, but she was beginning to understand that his importance extended far beyond their personal friendship. "Razer doesn't try to scare anyone," Lily explained during one of Dr. Kim's interviews. "He just doesn't let anyone scare him either. I think that's why the aliens like him now." The honey badger had indeed earned the respect of the former raiders, though they maintained a careful distance from him during social interactions. Commander Grix had begun studying Earth biology in an attempt to understand how such a small creature could possess such formidable defensive capabilities. "Your species fascinates us," Grix admitted to David during a recent trade meeting. "You created a warrior that fights not for conquest but for protection. This concept is difficult for predator species to comprehend." The success at Kepler colony had inspired other human settlements to request enhanced Earth animals for their own protection. The colonial authority was carefully considering which species might be suitable for different environments and diplomatic situations. Captain Thre had become an advocate for peaceful trade relations throughout the former raider community. His fleet's transformation from pirates to merchants was being studied by other clans who were beginning to recognize the long-term benefits of legitimate commerce over short-term raiding profits. The small human and her creature taught us that true strength comes from protecting rather than conquering, Thre explained to a gathering of clan leaders. "This lesson has proven more valuable than any treasure we ever stole." The galactic community was still adjusting to the idea that humanity's pets could serve as effective deterrents against military aggression. Several species had requested detailed information about Earth's wildlife, hoping to understand what other surprises humans might have brought with them to the stars. Lily continued her daily routine of playing with Razer in the Crystal Gardens, though their games now took place under the watchful eyes of security cameras operated by researchers studying their interaction patterns. The honey badger seemed to enjoy the attention and had developed several new behaviors specifically designed to entertain his human audience. The crystal formations, that had once been a battlefield, now hosted regular trade fairs where dozens of species gathered to exchange goods and services. Razer served as the unofficial host of these events, his presence ensuring that all participants maintained peaceful behavior. Dr. Kim concluded her research with a report that would influence human colonial policy for decades to come. Her findings suggested that Earth animals, properly selected and enhanced, could serve as living symbols of humanity's commitment to protecting rather than conquering. "The honey badger represents everything that makes humans unique among spacefaring species," her report stated. "We are predators who chose to become protectors, warriors who fight only to defend what we value. This paradox confuses our enemies and inspires our allies." As the twin suns set over Kepler colony, Lily sat in her favorite spot among the crystal formations while Razer dozed contentedly in her lap. The trade ships in orbit represented dozens of species that had learned to respect Earth's approach to interstellar relations. The Thre galaxy was discovering that humans brought More than just technology and ambition to the stars, they had brought millions of years of biological evolution that had produced creatures capable of inspiring respect through strength, tempered by loyalty. It was a combination that no other species had ever achieved. Razer opened one eye and studied the alien merchants preparing their ships for departure. The honey badger's expression suggested satisfaction with another successful day of maintaining peace through the simple expedient of being absolutely impossible to intimidate. His reputation now extended across 3 sectors, but his priorities remained unchanged: protect his human companion and maintain his territory. The former raiders had learned that some battles were better won through cooperation than conquest. It was a lesson that would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy, one trade agreement at a time. And it had all begun with a small girl and her remarkable pet in a garden made of crystallized starlight.